So hello everyone and welcome back to STW Sports. I'm host Samuel Wright and today I'm joined by Sheffield Wednesday fan Robert Hurst. And Rob, welcome to the show. Pleasure to have you on once again. And only one place to start with Sheffield Wednesday. Big game, the first leg of the playoff semi-final in League One this Friday away at Sunderland. Massive game, and how are you feeling going into it?
Hi Sam, nice to see you again. I'm always quite pessimistic, but that tends to serve me well. I'm excited for it, but very nervous. Sunderland, particularly under the new manager, are formidable. So certainly not going to be easy.
Yeah, and obviously this time last year, Rob, with a bit of a contrast. I know you were a league high, but we were speaking about the relegation battle going into the final day, and obviously that ended in disappointment. You did, of course, come down. A lot of question marks for Sheffield Wednesday at the start of the season. How would they cope with the financial situation? Would they be able to bounce back at the first attempt? Because the likes of Ipswich and Sunderland have proved it's not easy to do that. But do you feel like the clubs came a long way in a year?
Yeah, certainly the mood amongst the fans in certain quarters anyway was very much one of, wouldn't be surprised if we suffer a double relegation. A large proportion of the squad left some really popular players that had performed well in the past. You would argue to say that they were great players because we did end up getting relegated, so perhaps it had run its course. But to see the level of the squad exodus and the financial position that the club was in as a result of COVID did leave a lot of fans with a lot of concerns for the season ahead.
Yeah, and obviously with the end of the season, 7 wins in 11 games, I believe it is, for Sheffield Wednesday, and obviously going one behind, of course, at the weekend against Portsmouth, and then coming back to win the game quite convincingly. Do you feel like as well, Wednesday, do you feel like maybe it's taken a little bit of time to get going in some ways, but you've hit form at the right stage of the season?
Yeah, the manager gave his interview pre-game earlier this afternoon, actually, and I think he reflected on the season really well. The players have had an awful lot thrown at them. So initially, a large amount of players all thrown into the pot altogether. So there's an element. I do genuinely believe that is a thing of gelling, of understanding each other's game. I think if you add one or two players onto a team, it's not as pronounced. But to have so many of the starting 11 be new, that certainly had an impact at the start of the season. Trying to find the best team. Then we had an awful lot of injuries against something we've suffered over many years at Hillsborough. And I know the manager did an in-depth review to try and understand what was driving that. Didn't really say if there were any changes that he had made, but we certainly saw the benefit of that. And at one point we couldn't field a fit centre back despite playing 3 at the back and having a large number on the books. We didn't actually have a centre half playing in there.
Yeah, and with Sunderland as well, your opponents going into the playoffs, obviously a massive semi-final, one of the biggest in League One history, you'd probably argue, and 2 attendances that are going to be magnificent as well. In the league, you've had very contrasting results against them, as I touched on before we started the interview. 3-0 win early on in November and a 5-0 loss at the end of December. And the thing is, both of them games were a very long time ago, and both teams have experienced quite a lot of change since in form. And obviously, Sunderland have had a managerial change throughout the season as well. Do you think going into this game, form doesn't really matter though? And obviously, previous results feel like it's going to be a case of which team performs better over 2 legs?
Yeah, I also read Alex Neil, the new Sunderland manager's thoughts on the game ahead. He thought both of the 5-0 and the 3-0 games were much closer than the scoreline suggested, which I tend to agree with, actually, having watched both. And we are now both 2 of the form teams in the table heading into this game. So that would suggest a clash of 2 equal forces at the moment. So I do think it will be an entertaining game. I don't think it'll be perhaps as cagey as a typical playoff final, but I think it'll be closer in terms of goals. I wouldn't rule out a few going in, but I could see it being more like a 4-3 or a 3-2 as opposed to one team having a significant advantage.
Yeah, and just got to touch on the other game in the playoffs as well, Rob. Obviously, MK Dons v Wycombe. I mean, obviously, MK Dons have been fantastic this season. They finished third for a good reason. Obviously, ended the season really well as well, beating Plymouth, obviously 5-0, I believe it was on the final day. Wycombe as well, obviously, a club who will feel disappointed they went down last season in the Championship, and they've certainly given it a right good go again, as they always seem to under Gareth Ainsworth. Out of the two teams, if Wednesday did make it to the final, any one of them you'd prefer?
I'm probably going to regret this, but don't play it back. Should the worst happen, but I would prefer MK Dons. I think it suits the way we play better. I haven't enjoyed the games against Wycombe. They're very good at grinding out the result, and fair play. So I'm not snobby about it, but it is awful to watch with the way they do manage the game after going ahead.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. We're going to speak about previous playoff experiences now, Rob, as well. Obviously, Wednesday have been in the playoffs in the Championship a few years ago. I believe it was 2017. They're beaten in the semi-final and previously in the final in 2016. Obviously, the playoffs are one of them. When you're a neutral, they're the best things ever. You love them because they're so interesting. When you're a fan, it's a little bit of a different story, it's fair to say. What's your take on the playoffs going into it as a fan?
Much the same as yours. I love watching the playoffs at the end of the season, as long as we're not involved. Much the same with the cup games. I absolutely hate games where there's anything riding on it. I mean, it makes the atmosphere in the stadium like nothing else. But emotionally, it can be quite a ride during the course of the game. Whereas if you go to a league game, obviously you can just watch it and enjoy it for what it is. I never like to lose, but if the game's been entertaining, I'll walk away happy regardless. But if we take the last playoff final that Wednesday went to at Wembley, the occasion was sensational. And although I walked away relatively lighthearted because of the way the season had panned out, and I was very proud of the team after sort of quite some years where we just weren't enjoyable to watch. It still was such a disappointment to get so close and just fall short going to the Premier League. And you see what's happened since. Now we're hoping to beat a very good Sunderland team to have a chance of getting back to the Championship. So there's not a lot of joy in it, but there's an awful lot of a lot riding on it.
Yeah, I was going to ask as well. We touched on this a little bit, didn't we, of course, before we started the interview about the Championship now, maybe the quality of the division. Obviously, I think when Championship clubs like the likes of Ipswich, Sunderland, and obviously even yourselves, Wednesday go down, and they kind of think, oh, this league should be quite easy to win, really. But I mean, it's not really the case anymore, is it? I know Rotherham have got a bit of a habit of being a yo-yo club, but there's not really many teams who do bounce back at the first attempt comfortably. At least they do it for the playoffs or finish second. So it's kind of one of them. Do you think the quality of the league has, maybe exceeded your expectations?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, there's been some very enjoyable football to watch. I mean, I guess it's difficult to be certain because you're not comparing apples with apples. I'm conscious we've got different players as well, so it could just be a comparative having come down. But some of the football I've seen has been enjoyable, and I think, although the manager touched on it and wasn't as blunt as this, it did feel like our players did think that they should walk some of the early games, and we got a nasty surprise on the back of it. And when I visibly saw our work rate up, then the quality of the football that we were playing did shine through against some teams, but not so much against others, which does say that there are some really good footballing teams in that league.
Yeah, say, Rob, obviously this answer will probably change if you win the playoffs. Well, it definitely will. But what's been your highlight over the 46-game season of being a Wednesday fan this year?
Probably seeing the reconnection of the players with the fans, actually. I mean, we scored an awful lot of goals in the home games, and the football has been enjoyable to watch. But some of the characters have been a real highlight. Peacock Farrell in the goal is very communicative with the fans. Marvin Johnson didn't let trying to fill in at centre back put him off putting in good performances and spending time talking to the fans. Dennis in the middle of the pitch there, always smiling. It feels like we've got a team of characters again. And I don't know why that didn't feel the case over the last couple of the years. Is that just as simple as it's easier to enjoy winning. I don't know, but it does feel like we have a team of characters who've connected with the fans.
Yeah, and that's obviously the fans being back certainly helped as well. We remember last season, obviously behind closed doors. Don't really think helped any club, of course, but I think Wednesday, you can argue, might have been one of the worst hit by that with the situation that was going on off the field as well. Also, Rob, just a little bit of a word on the championship, bit of a throw-off question this, but regarding the teams who are coming down from the championship, obviously, looking this season, what's your take on that, especially the likes of Derby, Peterborough and Barnsley obviously usually have a habit of being League One clubs more so, but especially Derby, obviously you're in the relegation battle with them last season. What's been your take on the maybe the championship relegation battle, if you've kept any track of it?
Yeah, I have a little bit. As you know, I'm an avid listener of BBC Radio Sheffield, which covers Barnsley as well. But disappointed for them. I think they've tried a number of different things from a number of same things, I should say, with the way they go about recruiting managers. And this time it hasn't worked twice in a row, which has had a net result of a relegation. So I do feel for them, and I think with what they're willing to invest in the squad, it could be a difficult next season for them in League One. Peterborough, I think, can count themselves a little unfortunate, but I could see them doing well next year, consolidating and then making a push for the playoffs. I think there are so many really good teams that won't go up from League One this year that they'll struggle to trouble the top few. And Derby, much as I hate to say it because I don't necessarily like him as a character, I've been incredibly impressed with how Wayne Rooney's gone about his business as a manager. And I think, given the level of the points deduction they've had, what they've managed to achieve has been extraordinary. So I wouldn't back against him recruiting well enough to book that trend and trouble the top few.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, the final couple of questions I've got for you, Rob, the first one is your prediction going into the playoffs, actually. I mean, obviously, some two big games, obviously. MK Dons against Wycombe Wanderers, which is this evening, the first leg. And then, of course, Sheffield Wednesday, Sunderland, the first leg takes place tomorrow. What are your predictions for the semi-finals? Which teams do you think have got the edge?
I think MK Dons will win 2-1 tonight, if I had to guess. And only because I'm a bit superstitious, I will give you the same prediction I give my son for every home game or any game that Wednesday are involved with, and it's a 4-0 loss. And I find that serves me quite well.
Well, that's fair enough. It's certainly going to be an interesting game, that's for sure. There's no doubt about that. And obviously, a final question as well for you, Rob. Obviously, again, this grade will definitely change if you win the playoffs. But how would you maybe grade Wednesday's season as a whole?
B plus. I think a difficult start, but recovered well. But I understand the start and I appreciate the recovery.
Absolutely. Well, that's all we've got time for, Rob. Thank you very much for joining me. A pleasure to speak to you and have you back on again. And yes, good luck in Sheffield Wednesday in the League One playoffs.
Much appreciated. Thanks, Sam.